Greetings programs. You join me outside London Waterloo Station on a very grey autumn day, and I know I'm fairly late to the party on this one, but TfL has just introduced a brand new bus route, the Bakerloop, and it's part of the Superloop network. And what it is it's essentially a stopgap bus route until TfL are able to get the Bakerloo line extension built. And it's here to gauge demand and gauge exactly how many passengers you'd be getting and gauge the general consensus: we want a Bakerloo line extension. And so the Bakerloop is here to act as a stopgap until they can get that built. So let's go for a ride on it, because the buses are fairly interesting. Now, when I first look at the buses, I can't help but think of Lothian buses in Edinburgh. Does this livery not look like this? It looks so similar. If you're coming from Edinburgh, right, and you arrive in London and you see the Bakerloop, you're going to be like, wait, am I back home now? you expect a big red London bus, and you just get hit with the same livery you get back home. It's crazy. Anyway, I understand the livery, and the interior is quite cool, and I want to show you the interior. And I know I'm very late to the game, you've probably all seen stuff about this anyway, but I want to do it anyway, because cool and funny. And Beaulieu Park is next week, and I need an interim video. So, yeah, let's go on the Bakerloop. Right, and we're on the Bakerloop, and as you can see, these seats have a Bakerloo line maquette. So they actually have the same maquette that the Bakerloo line has in, on the tube. This is an Enviro 400. This is an Enviro 400 EV, which obviously it is an older model of the EV, and you can see the seats still retain their go-ahead blue upholstery, but they are comfortable. Seats they've obviously been newly upholstered, they've been newly padded, the maquette is new. They've got aircon, as with any Enviro 400 EV, and the interior is airy with a bit of ambience inside. So they're nice, but as with any Enviro 400 that I've been on so far, in the summer they can become a bit of a sauna, even with the aircon, so just watch out for that. Now, what's interesting about this route is it starts at Waterloo, and it's going to follow the proposed route of the Bakerloo line extension, which is obviously a great thing. But it does really bring up one of the points I do want to bring up at some point on the channel. I thought this is a good time to bring it up. And that's, it gets caught up in a lot of traffic, as will be the downfall of any bus route. And this is a problem with the Superloop as a whole, because they branded it as an express bus route, but it's not an express bus route if it gets caught in traffic. And you get problems like this when you get the new proposed Superloop route that goes between Stratford and Chingford, that will be running along Markhouse Road. Now, Markhouse Road gets extremely congested, especially during peak times, whereas I would have a counter proposal to TfL, which would be to reinstate the Hall Farm curve, which is a little section of track, can't be more than 500 metres, that links the Lee Valley Chingford line to the Lee Valley Tottenham Hale branch. And what that would do was it would allow trains to run from Stratford all the way through to Chingford, calling at the same essential calling points that the new Superloop route would call at, but it would not get caught up in the traffic. You'd be able to run every half-hour frequency, for example. And I'll probably do a video going properly in depth into this proposal, because it's something I'm quite passionate about. But this is a good way to highlight it, because the Bakerloop, one of the big downfalls that people have mentioned already, is it keeps on getting caught in traffic. And as it's supposed to be a proposed route for the Bakerloo line extension, that's not very good, because it keeps on getting caught in traffic. So it just makes the need for a Bakerloo line extension even more obvious. With that being said, I'm going to take a ride on it. I'm going to take it through to Lewisham, and then I'm going to the East Grinstead Steam Gala, because steam trains. So, yeah. And there we go. We've ridden the Bakerloop all the way from Waterloo through to Lewisham. And it does really highlight one of the things that I do find very prevalent and sort of worrying. And that is, the big people in charge are very fixated on just putting a plaster over things, just putting a temporary fix over things. For example, as I brought up earlier, the reinstatement of the Hall Farm curve. Now, Network Rail own the track. It would be a very minimal investment to reinstate it, but the amount of things you'd be able to do once you'd reinstated that curve, I mean, there's so much demand for it. Instead of just putting another bus route there, which will get congested in all the traffic. And the same thing goes to the Bakerloop. Now, I know this is to serve eventually a proper Bakerloo line extension. This is just a stopgap. It's a rail replacement bus. But it still is showing a pattern where governments and local authorities are just saying, oh, we'll just stick a bus on the route that really there is demand for a train. From Waterloo to Lewisham, it took about 30 minutes. A train could do that in 10. From Walthamstow to Stratford, it takes about 30 minutes. A train could do that in 10. So yes, now that I'm in the station, I can probably wrap up the video. But the moral of the story is, just build the train. Yes, you can put a bus in the stopgap to, gauge demand and do all of that. But whatever you do, just build the train. Keep building the train, because that's what we need. Okay, we don't need trains. We don't need a bus to be there instead of a train. We need a bus to be there as a temporary measure for the train. Of course, buses have their purpose as well. But when you're putting a bus there instead of a train, it's when it becomes a problem. Because the Bakerloo line would serve the Bakerloop route much better than the bus. Because with the bus, you're limited by comparatively pedestrian speed limits of the road. You can get caught in traffic. Navigating around London is an absolute hassle. And yeah, it's just not as good as a train. And while it's a good stopgap, I hope that's not the only thing that comes of it. I hope an actual Bakerloo line extension does happen, because otherwise it's going to be very bad. And the same thing can be said for the new Superloop route that's going between Chingford and Stratford. Whereas, because there is a lot of demand for it, but you'd be better off with a train instead. There is so much demand for a direct rail link between Walthamstow and Stratford. Now, I will do a proper reason as to why this should be implemented later. For now, I need to get on this train. So, I'll see you next week.